of a now late afternoon, as the sun shines through the curtain lace and shadows wash the room. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at a beautiful Paul Simon song. Kind of sad, kind of scary, but one of his absolutely most poetic things, the Dangling Conversation. I love this song. It has some very simple but elegant things going on the guitar that we're going to take a look at. And it's all finger picking, although you could even strum it and keep it going. And it's really kind of generic finger picking. You really just have to keep a steady alternating bass pattern going without anything too fancy, but he has really nice little bass lines in there. And so it features a lot of inversions of chords. We'll take a look at that in the theory breakdown a little bit about some of what's happening. And so all you really have to do to play this is play a few simple open chords, a few nice little hammer-ons that we'll get into, especially on the G chord. We can put in a few little connecting bass runs that I heard on some of his live versions of it, and there aren't many. But anyway, this first appeared on one of their biggest albums. Well, here it is, as a matter of fact. Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme, really their third album. Of course, had Scarborough Fair on it. And what is the other tune that was really... Flowers Never Bend with the Rainfall, one of my favorites. So, also, when they were making records like this, they did stuff back then. I got to show you, a little show and tell here. They came sometimes with posters. Look at this. This came with this album many years ago. And it's still in pretty pristine shape. The Simon and Garfunkel poster that came with the Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme album. So, collectors out there, don't bother me, it's not for sale. But now, the song is, they do it capoed at the 3rd fret. I did it capoed at the 2nd when I sang it there just a minute ago, and that's probably where I'll leave it for this lesson, but you can play this, you can capo it really wherever you want, because the capo is really mostly for the voices and stuff. So, again, what we'll be doing in here is just keeping a steady alternating bass pattern going through some relatively easy chords, and a couple of just nice little... One of the things that makes Paul Simon's songs so interesting is that even though they're fairly simple on the guitar, he always throws in some beautiful fills and little bass note runs and hammer-ons and all kinds of small embellishments that make them just stand out from what I would call a real generic finger-picking song. So we'll look at how to do that in this song. And with a lot of his songs, we are not going to worry about playing it note for note the way he plays it, because he'll play it significantly differently every time, or at least somewhat differently. So you're just going to turn it into a little accompaniment that you can sing to, and that is it. So let's talk a little bit about some of the chords and the theory and the picking, and then we'll get into the lesson. One of the main fundamental elements with the Dangling Conversation is Paul Simon uses a lot of chord inversions. Now, an inversion just means that you have something other than the root of the chord in the bass. Quick look at the chords we're going to need for the Dangling Conversation. In the intro, we have a C chord to G with B in the bass, and as I mentioned briefly in the theory breakdown, all we need for the G's with B in the bass is the B at the 2nd fret of the 5th string. Really simple finger-picking patterns going on in this song, and they're fairly optional and up to you to kind of do whatever you want. But what I want to talk about here is that it's mostly a steady alternating bass. Matter of fact, all the way through the song, your thumb is going to be alternating back and forth between 2 bass strings that change according to what chord you're playing, and most of the time you're just going to be playing some fingers in between. So a really common thing, I'm playing a C chord right now. So the attachments that I have to go along with this are just a single page chord chart that has the chords at the top and the words at the bottom, and the chords just laid out by letter name, and then a couple of page guitar profile, GP6 and or PDF, depending on what you have at home to print these up with. And the tablature version, is of course in the guitar profile, has exactly one way to play this song. There are exactly lots of ways to play this song. You can quote me on that. And so what I'm going to do is walk through the introduction, just the 3 lines of the intro, and we'll worry about doing it exactly what I have in the tab. But at that point, once the singing comes in, you can really make up anything you want. And I don't even have exact tab for the second half of the verse. I have just the bass notes. I'll explain more about that as we get there, because that's the only thing that's important. There's a nice little bass run that we want to have in there on our E minor chord. So as I talked about, capo at the 2nd fret for this, just to get a slightly little higher tone out of the guitar. And if you can play this, of course, without a capo, no problem. But right now, if you want to play along with me, I will do a slowed down version without the capo so that you can hear it really, really well. But for just walking through it, I want to have the capo on right now. So steady alternating bass. In the first measure, we just have 2 bass notes followed by your index finger, and then 2 bass notes again followed by your index finger. So it's very simple. Our C chord, our G with B in the bass, and now I go to a D chord. Put down the whole D chord, starting with the 5th string in the bass, and now you're going to come up to a pinch on the 3rd string with your thumb and the 1st string with your middle finger. Paul Simon usually plays with only 2 fingers, and so most of the time those 2 fingers stay together on either the 1st and 2nd strings or the 2nd and 3rd strings. He uses the 1st and 2nd strings when he's using the 3rd string as a bass note. So I get to this first measure of D, and now for the rest of the measure, we start what is the meat of this song, just keeping your fingers alternating while the bass alternates. A little practice partner here for you. It's slowed down metronome version, uncapoed, so you don't have to worry if you've been looking at this whole lesson saying, I don't have a capo, I can't play along with it. Here's what you could do, and I'm going to play this along with the metronome. Got it set at 92. We will just try to stay on the beat and run through it one time, top to bottom, probably DCing back through and skipping to the coda, which we're just going to strum a G chord. Let's see how it goes. 2, 3, 4. So if all went well, you are developing your own approach to fingerpicking, just being able to wing it, make it up as you go, and not worry about playing it exactly the same way every time. That was part of the goal in this lesson. So yes, I know, there is missing tablature, but you are on your own for that. Matter of fact, once you've played the introduction, you might just tackle the whole verse without even looking at it, just looking at the chart, because everything you need to know is really there. But I decided not to go quite that hardcore yet with this song and to just give you half the verse and let the second half work out.